All right.
So we have, this is from Zach. What do you do when a client is mostly red dots on the screen? How do you do the assessment without crushing their hopes and dreams?
This sounds like you.
Yeah, it sounds like me, red dots. You take them out back and shoot them, Zach. All right, let's see.
Here's how I always like to say it. So I always use this analogy with, or this story to tell my players. I'm like, imagine if you were the, let's say you were a college coach,
Yep.
Dave, and you had one spot on the team, right? And we've got literally these two applicants that are both equal talent,
Yep.
right? And they're both scratch golfers. You can't decide based on watching the performance. So we say it's all going to come down to the screen, right?
Okay.
And we have one guy that's all red dots, which
Yep.
means he fails every test.
Yep.
And the other guy's all green, which means he passed everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing as a coach?
I'm taking the all red. There's potential, baby. We fix them.
So I think obviously there's two ways to look at this. I think a lot of coaches would say like maybe why don't I take the green dot maybe as my starter?
Yeah.
I redshirt the red dot guy. But if our guys work on the red dot guy the whole year, if
Yeah.
they're equal talent now, imagine if I got their body performing well, they would probably outperform the green dot
That's
guy,
right.
right?
That's
So
right.
I look at like red dots as potential. Like it's
Yeah.
like it's something we can work on, right?
And I think the other thing too is, even the elite level, the best, have red dots, right? Everybody does. And that might be what makes them so good. So if you get a client that has red dots, and usually what they want to know, well, how do I fix this? And it gives them hope. You talk about this all the time,
it gives
right?
them two things. Number one, it gives them an excuse,
Yeah.
right? So they're like, no wonder I've been struggling with this. It's not me. I'm not crazy. And then number two, it gives them hope, right? So I don't look at this as like you said, crushing their hopes and dreams. I actually think it gives them hopes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, cool, it's something else we can work on. And that's how I approach this, Zach. It's kind of more of awesome. We got something we can work on. I think it can help us perform better. And if they're all red, I think the bigger question is like, where do we start?
Yeah.
Right. So if all these things in the gym, and I think that, that depends on, I think, what you're trying to change in the swing. Like if somebody said, hey, they're swaying
Yes.
and everything's red, well, then now I might be looking at more of core control, hip, glute, hip range of motion, things that help with the sway. Where if you said, hey, I think they're chicken winging or so, maybe I would think something different.
And the other thing too is, when you get elderly, that have injuries or they may have a lot of red, a lot of times you're not ever going to get out of red. They're not going to go from a can't even squat to a full overhead deep squat. But if they can improve their range just a little bit, that's going to make a huge difference in their world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, Zach. Let's see. You're right, Zach. Shooting them is not an option. Okay, I got it. Okay, so next one. What is the best way to prevent spine injuries when practicing swing speed training with junior golfers? From Lily.
Okay. I guess there's a couple of things there. First of all, obviously you're going to screen them, but I think the problem with junior golfers is they're going through this growth spurt, and there's a lot of loads that you got to be careful of.
Well,
right?
I think it depends. Obviously, like you said, in junior golf, we always talk about these speed windows, right? Mm-hmm. There's two times where you can really optimize speed training. Not that you can't do speed training anytime, but two places where we really see a big boost is during the growth spurt and when they're really young. So anytime they're growing fast, we say train fast. That's because the bones are growing faster than the muscles get put on tension, and people who have lots of speed tend to be tight.
That's right.
To say that, right? So it's like a bow and arrow. You want the string to be taut, not slack, right? But like you said, sometimes doing speed stuff can create some potential injuries, and you specifically asked Lily about spine injuries. So I'm going to tell you what I say with all injuries. It's the same way. Anytime you're doing a speed protocol, and we see this in baseball with the weighted ball programs, is all of the proper ones, the ones that are done properly, I think we get very few injuries, and that's because it all starts with a warm-up. Right? Yeah. I think that people don't realize is we want to build a basic foundation of fundamental movement and strength first, do some type of warm-up, and then we start adding in power speed protocols. Yeah. If you're like, wow, I see everybody doing these speed protocols, and I want to do it, but you've never worked out, you have all red dots, right? You don't do any warm-up and you start swinging stuff, that's just called stupid training, right? Yeah. And that leaves you vulnerable for injury. So I think if you do basically, number one, make sure they should be doing speed training. Basic fundamentals, right? So get your mobility stability to a point where you should be adding speed. Don't add speed on top of crap, right? And then literally there should be some type of activation warm-up done before the speed protocol. So I don't want you to be tired, fatigued, but I don't want you to be just cold and start doing a speed program.
And I think the other thing is with speed too is, what are they using to create the speed? Because sometimes there's bad patterns there, like so you gotta kind of look a little bit deeper.
One of the things I like to do is if you feel like their mechanics are potentially something you don't want them to replicate, you're working on something different. We like doing speed training outside of their sport.
There you go.
So like if let's say you're a golfer and you're trying to work on your driver speed, it's okay to do throwing protocols. It's okay to do hitting protocols from baseball. It's okay to do tennis speed drills with stuff, because then I'm not really worried about ingraining a bad pattern. I'm just developing a faster nervous system.
And I know working down with Milo too at the junior camp down here in Del Mar, I think one of the big things that I see him doing with the juniors is training sprinting, like really creating that base of support first before you add other forms of speed. Right.
Looks like Charles just asked a question. Hey Charles. Does working on disassociation, separating lower half from the top half, cause lower back pain? Well, anytime you create more torque between your upper body and your lower body, you can be vulnerable to putting some stress on the lower back. But the best golfers in the world obviously create 45 to 55 degrees of torque between the lower body and the upper body. I always say is that torque. If you think about it, people think, that torque is just wrenching the lower back.
Yeah.
But actually, that torque is actually hip mobility combined with thoracic spine mobility. That's what the best in the world do, right? So the lumbar spine's kind of, think of it as it should be stable. The thoracic spine's rotating, the hips are rotating. And if you do it like that, your lower back is not very vulnerable. If you don't have thoracic spine mobility or thorax, and then you don't have hip mobility, and then you are trying to get it from the lumbar spine doesn't have 45 degrees.
No, it doesn't.
If you try and create that, it will definitely create that.
Yeah. We got another one here. Out of the level 1 screens, which would you be most concerned about a player failing?
That's kind of, we kind of talked about that with all the red dots, but now if you're saying independent of the golf swing, if the golf swing doesn't matter, and if I didn't want them to fail any of these, to me, I think we got to go to I'm going to say the big three, right? We got hip mobility, spine mobility, right? So your seated trunk rotation, lower core rotation, core control, bridge, pelvic tilt, this whole trunk
structure,
unit, right? But then, there's stupid ones too. Like, listen, if you can't hinge down, you can't make contact, right? So like if your wrist hinge is off, it's impossible to play golf.
Yeah, so if impact is the key. So I guess it's what you're looking for in their golf swing. To me as an instructor, I look at pelvic tilt a lot. I think that people that can't pelvic tilt, they stress their lower spine because they get into S posture, they can't get out of it. And I just see a lot of issues with standing up, early extension, so on. So pelvic tilt's a big one for me.
You're answering like you should answer it. Coach should say, I'm concerned about the screen that's affecting the performance that I'm seeing, right? So worst screen by far would be owner hinging.
It would be,
right? Because if you can't do that, you can't play golf.
Wouldn't be able to play.
Then I would agree. Pelvic tilt's pretty bad, but here's the thing. Most people can't pelvic tilt. A lot of times they don't have glute activation, so bridge kind of in there as well.
Yeah,
and then hip range motion, thorax. If you can't rotate for your hips and your thorax, a lot of bad stuff's going to happen.
Yeah, I look at that first structure, because if you look at kinematic sequence, if the pelvis and the lower body is going first, which we know, then I'm looking at, this area takes the power to the next area. So if this is dysfunctional, you're usually not going to have a good sequence.
Totally agree.
Okay, why can't we bring the swing from practice onto the golf course? Good one there. So I'll answer mine, then you can answer yours, Greg, on that one. So to me, I think the biggest problem is the practice program. So what I see a lot of is, somebody works on the driving range and they think they've got it, but the practice isn't done correctly. In other words, there's no testing in place after the lesson to get them prepared to take it to the golf course. And to me, I just think that beating balls does nothing for you. Limiting the amount of balls you have and actually picking a target and going through a full routine and a process while you're learning something gets you ready to take it to the golf course.
I'm going to tell a story about one of my players. So one of the times I was working on a player and was here for 3-4 months.
Yep.
Lower back pain and PGA Tour player. And thought we were doing some great work. Everything was awesome, feeling better. I go to the tournament, right? And I'll never forget this. At the PGA Tour event, I go there and I watch him play 18 holes. First round, first hole, gets up there. Dude, it's a different person. Yeah. I mean, like the process, like you said, like the way they approach the ball, the waggles, the looks, all the way through. And I'm like, what the heck are they doing?
Yeah.
Right? And they go through and they play all 18 holes. And at the end, I walk over and the player walks up to me and goes, I know what you're going to say. I'm like, what am I going to say? And he's like, you're wondering about all these waggles, all these moves. It's just something I do on the course. And I'm like, listen, I don't care about the waggles and stuff on the course. I just want to know, why are we not practicing this?
Yeah.
Because
incorporating it into what you're doing.
I want to practice what we're going to take to the golf course. And like you're saying, is most people don't do that. They do something totally different on the range. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. Aren't we practicing when we play?
That's right.
So what's most important thing to me is watch what they do. Like, even as simple as like, okay, let's say we're going to go play, let's say we're not going to play golf today. And everybody else I'm competing with is playing today.
Yeah.
I don't want to get behind.
Yeah.
So I want to do effective practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many full swings do I need to hit today?
Not a lot. You can run it in your mind, right?
If you're a PGA Tour player, right? Let's just do PGA Tour. Everybody's obviously not PGA Tour. But if you're a PGA Tour player, let's say you shoot 70.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, how many putts do they usually have? 25 to 30?
25, yeah.
Let's
30,
let's say
28.
30 on a bet.
Yeah,
Okay, say 30, right? So that's 40 swings. Of the 40 swings, how many of those are chips or pitches?
Yeah, a good percentage.
Okay,
probably what?
So let's say there's 30, maybe 30 to 35 full swings.
Yeah.
Right? So literally, if you're going to go practice 18 holes, it's 30, 35 swings.
That's it.
If you run your full process.
Yeah.
So if I go through full process, pretending like I'm picking my shot, looking at my lie, running my pre-shot routine, hit, my post all the way through, I played 18 holes today.
That's right.
That's all it takes. But literally, most people will go, I got to go hit 200 balls, loosen up more. That's not what people do. I say, so look at what you normally do when you play. Try and mimic that when you practice. And try and keep your practice as random as possible. We talk about this in motor learning. And I feel like then it does transfer.
It does. I mean, you know, I wrote an article for Golf Magazine with the Navy SEAL guy, you know, Chris Sinog, and we wrote it on this thing called lead lag measure, which most people focus on what's already happened, the lag measure, right? They see a slice and they want to correct the slice. So on the driving range, they keep hitting a bad shot and they just keep trying to correct the bad shot. They don't have some lead measure. They don't have something to program into their brain that stops them doing that. And, you know, he talked a lot about defined practice, 20 balls. A lot of times when you get more than that, you start to get fatigued. You start to think about other things. Immediately you hit a bad shot. All of a sudden you don't think what you're doing is right. And you can never take it to the golf course. So I think that's what's so important is developing that proper practice protocol.
And obviously other things that are difficult too is if you hit off mats, then you can play off grass, which I know that's the majority of people doing. It's still not the same thing, right?
Sure.
Again, if you're hitting like 20 drivers in a row, do you ever hit 20 drivers in a row?
No.
On the golf course, you don't do that either. These are all things that people think are helping, but it's kind of like we always say, if you do the same thing over and over again, you think you're getting better, but it's like if I said, what's 27 times 38, and you did the math, and you spent a minute doing this, and then I said, okay, what's 27 times 38 again? You would just give me the number, and you wouldn't do math again.
You're not running.
So like if you did that 100 times, are you getting better at math? I don't really think so.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Okay. So those are some of the things. And by the way, in our golf level 2 class, we talk a ton about motor learning. Me and Dr. Tim Lee, who's one of the top researchers in the world on this. So if you're really interested in that, how to take practice in there, I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Okay, so I'm taking my test at the end of the month. Any recommendations?
What are you waiting for? Take it right away.
Here's a recommendation. The letter C. You have 4 options, A, B, C, or D. Just C when in doubt. Okay, don't get C. Okay, so.
Well, 2 things. I mean, obviously, when you take the test, you've got your book, so make sure you have your manual available. You've got your online resources, and don't panic. I mean, it's 10 questions on the body swing, so depending where you're coming from, whether it's medical, fitness, or golf, those areas that are more golf-specific, you probably need to study a little bit more. And those that are not, you probably know that. And what I would say is just don't overread the question. We see a lot of people miss questions because they're adding their own experience or adding something else. Listen to the question and whatever it tells you, answer that.
This is not a great question because let me tell you statistics. You know, statistically, the people who take the test within the first 48 hours have a massive higher passing percentage. So I don't know when you took the class, but saying you're going to do it at the end of the month is probably not the smartest. You should probably, like they said, take it now.
Take it now.
The longer you wait, the more chance you have to forget stuff.
Yeah.
And with that said, you do have 3 opportunities. I always say, just go try and take the first one. You might actually pass without even having to study. It's like in your brain. And if you don't pass the first one, it gives you an idea of what to expect.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. So don't panic. It's open book, open online class. But just don't wait till the end of the month. That's the advice.
Yeah, totally. Totally get that.
Okay, let me see if those are our pre-questions. Right, that was pretty easy.
Yeah.
So any of you guys that are on, please go ahead and ask any questions if you want in the Q&A. If not, we did have a request to talk a little bit about kinematic sequence. I'm going to talk about that for a second if we don't get anything. So I'm going to give you guys a 10-second count here.
Oh, there's one.
Okay, here we go. I say kinematic sequence, all of a sudden people start asking questions. They don't want to hear about that. Okay, how much real-life experience of level 1 practice do you recommend before jumping into level 2? Good question.
That's a good question. I mean, I think we will never tell you not to keep educating yourself. And, if you're in an opportunity where you have the time to look at the online resources, the level 2 class, as you know, is all online. It's very comprehensive and there's a lot of information. So,
Timmy, real quick, just type in what's your profession so we know, are you medical, fitness, golf professional? Let's give us an idea, so I think we can give you a little more fitness professional.
Fitness professional. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I would say you want to have proficiency at the screen. You want to have tested enough people to understand people's differences, and then dive into fitness is pretty in-depth when you go to fitness too.
I'm going to tell you, so here's the deal. I think a lot of people take our level 1 TPI class, and they think, hey, that's our fitness screen. So Demi, if you're a fitness professional, I just want to make sure you understand, that was not our fitness screen. Right? So literally, we don't know what the strength of the player is. We don't know what their power is. We don't know what their cardiovascular endurance is. There's a ton of things that I need to be able to build a fitness routine for them. So literally, what you got was the screen to predict what their golf swing looks like.
Yep.
And that helps you communicate with their golf professional. That's what the golf professionals are doing. But if you are already actively working with people, which I assume you are in the gym, and you want to know what the fitness evaluation that we do on our players, well, then there's no reason to wait, right? So to me, fitness and medical, you're probably used to assessing players and people already.
Yep.
So doing a screen probably wasn't a shocker to you, whereas if you've never done physical screens before, like a lot of our golf professionals, they might want to get their feet wet doing that before they add more screens.
Yep.
But if you feel comfortable doing screening and you want to see what we do, the fitness level 2 class, I mean, we have on there, we've got Dr. Tom House, who's one of the best group training programs. We've got Janet Alexander showing you how to train women versus men, which I think is incredible. We got Robert Yang taking you all the way into Olympic lifting. And then, of course, Lance Gill and Jason Glass are the people who kind of walk you through the whole program of all of our progressions. I mean, it's just packed full of information on there. So I don't see any reason to delay if you want to know what our fitness screen is.
Yep, totally.
Charles, can you please give advice to help an elderly golfer with C posture and golf swing? Standing posture is very good. Okay, so that means it's more basically bad patterning, right?
Yeah,
so,
2 things. I mean, first thing I do is check their clubs,
absolutely.
Make sure that the club isn't too short or too flat, because that sometimes they get rounding. And then to your point, Greg, I think sometimes if their standing posture is good, obviously hip hinge, I'd be looking at how to get them to hip hinge better. Scapular control, Ramsey McMaster used to do the angel wings and so on.
So, I mean, you have a couple of drills.
Right? Yeah, sure. So run over here. Obviously, you want to try and get your hip hinge better. So first of all, we'd want a little bit more of a hip hinge. Drop it. I have them drop the club down like this. The length of the club and lie is a big issue. If it's somebody that is taller or, in stature or maybe they just don't have the right lie angle. A lot of times the standard lie angle when they go to put them down. I would also look at grip. So sometimes they'll grip it too much in the fingers. If they have a strong grip, it tends to push the handle down and they can get this upper rounded area. So just check the grip and make sure stance-wise. There's a couple others, Greg, where we do kind of W turns where we pin the club behind their shoulders and their scapula like this, have them go in their setup position and just get used to this. Some people don't have, I find, the control back here. They don't have the strength in the upper scapula, especially ladies, So yeah, so the club behind the spine one Greg's tensioning about, but sometimes I find that if they don't have the strength as they go forward, everything just kind of slides. So, feeling like they're back here. Ramsey McMaster, late Ramsey McMaster used to have a great one called the angel wings where he'd get you up against the wall, using your shoulders, kind of rubbing them against the wall, feeling this back, and then he'd have them walk off the wall and maintain that posture and then go into a hip hinge trying to feel like they maintain that posture. So there's just a couple of them.
Okay. Okay, Ollie, I'm trying my hardest to reduce the time taken to screen, not rushing through. It's being, and let's see. I've been trying my hardest to reduce the time taken to screen, not rushing through it, and being through the professional.
What time should it take? I always find that clients want
professional. What time should it take? So how long should, basically, let me just rephrase this. How long should it take you to screen, right? I always find that clients want to chat throughout it, and it stretches the process out. Well, of course, you're always building a relationship with your client, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking with them, that's not a bad thing. That's kind of creating this rapport. To me, it's all about how many screens you do. Once you've done 25 screens, I would expect you to be able to do a full TPI screen all the way through all of it in under 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. If you're going through and doing the testing. Now, there are certain things that can make it longer. If they're really good at their balance.
Yeah.
If they're really good at their bridge tests.
That's right.
Because then they're sitting there
time.
for it.
Yeah.
Right. So if you pass both of those, that could
if
take
you're
a minute.
writing notes, if you're not using the app.
Yeah. So what I like to do is, honestly, I'm always like, listen, we're going to go test a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's going to give me a lot of information, but I don't really know what it all means till I put it all together. It's kind of like an investigation, and I want to interview everybody first. So as we go through, I'm not going to be telling you a lot. I'm just going to go through and collect the information. But when we're done, I promise I'm going to go through everything.
Yep.
So it kind of short circuits if they ask a question, I'll be like, I'm not sure yet, but I'll show you what it means when we're done. Even though you probably know what it means, it just kind of gets you going faster. And monkey see, monkey do. Remember, that's the important thing for speed too.
Yeah, there's no rush to doing the screen. Use it, if I always feel like, I think 10 minutes, we can do it in 6, 7 pretty easy. I think 10 minutes would be about the max. It shouldn't take longer than that.
Yeah. If you got an hour lesson, I wouldn't want it to take more than 10 minutes. You need 50 minutes to start working with them.
Yep.
All right, Ollie. All right, can you provide additional info on motor learning? Well, that's a very big topic, Elliot. So if you have specific questions on that, let me know. But basically, or if you're asking where you can get more additional information, or do you want me to talk about more additional information? Kind of give me a little more information on it.
Well, we cover it in golf too, right? So that's one thing we cover.
One of my favorite books is Motor Learning or Motor Control, and learned by Dr. Tim Lee and the late Dr. Richard Schmidt. That's their 5th edition. I think was the last edition that we refer to a lot. I think there's let's say 3 big things that you should learn about motor learning. There's a lot more than 3 things, but I think number 1, feedback, right? So we always talk about how you communicate with your student, right? And the one trait, Dave, that if you look at all top 100 coaches, I think the one thing that is always consistent on all coaches in all sports is that the best coaches in the world tend to talk less.
Yeah, I agree.
So in other words, it's like they're not overwhelming their students with feedback. It's not like, every shot they're saying something. Instead, they're teaching their students how to air detect themselves.
Yes.
They kind of minimize or delay their feedback. I think that's important. Second thing is how do humans learn motor patterns, right? And we now know that the best way to learn motor patterns is something called random practice, right? So block practice, same repetition over and over again. We kind of talked about this earlier. Random is running through a full process, which is different shots, different lies, different clubs. That tends to solve the mathematical problem each time. Don't repeat the same one, right? And then I think there's lots of other pieces that help understand that this is brain training. Like this is not muscle training, this is brain training, right? So we're literally trying to train the brain. I think a lot of people, they use like strength training rules or muscle training rules when they prescribe this stuff, but it's not. It's more, like I said, neurological brain science.
Yeah, you want to be running a motor program. A lot of people, Greg, talk about muscle memory, and we know muscles don't have memory. It's the pattern. So a lot of times it's firing that pattern. There are some simple things that I use. I use a simple app called Looper. And what that is I can bring in a video. There's something called mirror neurons in learning that you can look up online what a mirror neuron is. And it's basically, we're good at copying. As kids, when we first learn something, we see our parents do it and then we want to copy it, and so on through life. Even though you've got other opportunities to learn, a lot of times you're using just your eyes to see. So this little app I have called Looper, basically what it does is it enables me to watch a swing over and over and put it in at any speed I want. So if I'm actually trying to get somebody, I'll put it up there a little bit closer. Right there, this one, there we go. So, that's just, if I'm watching something or I'm trying to rehearse or trying to get a vision of something, something as simple as watching something over and over. Many years ago, back in the 80s,
that's how kids learn, right?
Yeah, that's how kids learn. So many years ago, there was a video by a guy named Al Geiberger who shot 59 called Cybervision, dating myself. But that used to get this VHS tape and you'd put it in your VHS and you'd watch it before you go out and play the game of golf. And it was just him hitting perfect shots. There was no audio, some subliminal music, and you would watch his rhythm. And this is mirror neurons. This is motor learning. You start to learn kind of through rhythm and so on and so forth.
Okay. Adam, will there be any online level 3 courses on fitness or medical in the future? So let me tell you kind of how we look at TPI. So we always say, if you want to become level 3, you have to go through the same process twice. Okay, so here's the process. Online class, sit a 2-day live workshop. That's level 1, right? Take the online prereq, come to the live workshop. If you want to get to level 3, you take the online level 2, and then come to the live level 3 workshop. So basically, I feel like there's lots of concepts we can teach you online. Like, in our golf level 2 class, I think understanding launch monitors and D-planes is better with animation. You can see stuff. But then there's certain things that I think are better live, right? When we do live. So I always feel like there's a little bit of best of both worlds when we do both. So there probably won't be a live or online level 3, but I can tell you for sure we're expanding our level 2s online.
That's right. And we're also expanding, for those, we're actually doing some other courses now, like the Eldoa stretching course that we've just completed.
We have some online education ones. They're not certification ones, but for more knowledge.
For more knowledge,
Yeah, we have an Eldoa, which is a fascial stretching class coming out here pretty soon. As Charles just asked, will it be a power level 3 class? I think I've said this before, but let me just say it right here. I promise there will be a power level 3 before the end of 2019. Actually, just had Justin
That's a major
James.
Political mistake right there. You know that.
I know. I just had Justin James in here. He's adding some kettlebell stuff we're excited about. Jason Zubak and I've been talking about this for a long time. And I think Force and Pressure, you'll see some of the stuff in that class as well. So I'm excited that we're going to do a power level 3, I promise, by the end of the year. Okay, let's see. Now we're getting all kinds. Okay, our organization, this is from Aaron, our organization does FMS pre, mid, postseason. I would like to incorporate TPI screens as well. Would you suggest the screen be done prior to treatment on a player? Or what would be your suggestions for use of the TPI screen? This is great. I get this all the time. People asking like, when do I do FMS? When do I do TPI? So basically they're both, let me just first start, they're both movement screens, right? So they're both movement screens. The TPI screen, as you probably know, is trying to predict how their body's affecting their golf swing, right? The FMS is trying to see how does your activities of daily living affecting your movement quality and your lifestyle. So sometimes, the way I look at this is if I do an FMS and I go, that's not that bad, but the golf swing looks horrible, they're probably doing some golf specific motor skills potentially wrong. So I'd want to look at that. Or vice versa, if I do the golf screen and I don't see anything wrong, but they're like, I'm in pain. I'm like, well, maybe it's the way they're walking the golf course or picking up their bag, and that would be more FMS. So I feel like it completes the picture, right? So I like doing them together. I know you might be like, well, that's there's a lot of time there involved to do that, but I do think information is power. And if I have that more information, it's better. If you don't have the ability to do both of them, then, I would, you said you do FMS pre, mid, postseason. I'd do it preseason. Because I'd want to know, what I'm supposed to be working on during the season for sure. So, but if you can, and then maybe mid and postseason, you're rescreening the things in the golf that they failed, just to see how we're doing. I mean, that's kind of how I would do that. Jeff just said, what about power level 2 online? When's it coming online? So, all right, so here's the truth. This is the day of
the day of reckoning.
Day of reckoning. So power level 2, we actually filmed the online 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And like I said, there are certain classes that I think are things that are better to learn live, certain things to do online. When I looked at those, when we completed it, I went back to all the guys and I said, unfortunately, I think this is way better live. So we did that live. Now, with that said, we've been expanding some of our level 2, we're adding level 3. So I wouldn't be shocked if we add a level 2, almost like level 1. I'm not sure about, but we might add a prereq, some things that you can, like the level 1 class, a prereq online that you would watch before coming to the live level 2, but I don't know if I'm ever going to eliminate the live level 2. Yeah. It's a pretty awesome live class. So.
It really is, yeah. And because you get so many people involved doing it,
that's what we've seen gains of 30 miles an hour.
I know.
Participants. Sometimes if you don't experience it, then you won't try it. And I think that's one of these things where you got to try.
Yep.
Okay, so those are the questions we got here. I want to say something about the kinematic sequence because we've had a lot of questions, not on this over here, but we've had a lot of questions from our TPI world and a lot of the other sports as well have been asking questions about this. And I think potentially we've made a mistake in how we're teaching this.
You made a mistake? God damn it.
I'm just saying you. So I think that potentially, as we evolve in teaching biomechanics, which is a very complicated subject, we keep getting better and we keep modifying these things. And I think one of the things that we've done is Dave, as you know, in level 1, we teach, there's 2 sequences we like to look at in the kinematic sequence. The first one's transition. We call it transition or the firing sequence. And then the next one's the downswing deceleration sequence.
That's right.
We said it's kind of like sprinters, right? If we're looking at the 100-meter, the downswing deceleration is who won the race. That's the most important. But sometimes we go back and look at who came out of the blocks first, right? That would be the transition, the firing sequence. I think the problem we've made, and I'm probably going to eliminate this for 2019, is that word firing sequence, right? I think you should think, if you're really trying to learn this, think kinematic sequence, the transition is the transition sequence. It's how you change direction from going backwards to forward, right? And that sequence of how you change direction is really important to see kind of how things start. But I don't think you're actively firing yet. Because here's the thing is when you fire, that's what creates the downswing deceleration order, right? So if I say, okay, the normal downswing deceleration order is the lower body slows down first, trunk slows down second, arm slows down third, club slows down fourth. Well, what makes the lower body slow down first? It's the trunk firing, first, right? What makes the trunk slow down second? It's the arms firing. What makes the arms slow down? It's the club firing. So like a lot of times, we were having this debate at our golf level 3 just a couple days with James. Somebody asked the question. They said, hey, you guys say that you should fire the club first, but on the kinematic sequence, it's pretty obvious that the hips fire first. I'm like, no, the hips transition first. But if you look at the kinematic sequence with great wedge players, the arms slow down first, which means the club fired first. And that's where I got I'm like, oh, I think we're using the wrong word, firing. So if you think about like what really happens, transition shows you how they change direction. But I think feel-wise, like if you feel like what feels like the fire, a lot of people look at the kinematic sequence and they go, look, the red line goes first, so spin your hips. And I'm like, we don't want you to spin your hips. So if the lower body's slowing down first, that's you firing the trunk. So
transition is really you're getting in position to fire.
Pretty much, I would say that. I would say so you're getting yourself, you're stopping one direction to start and transition the other direction.
So that you can deliver.
And then I think when the firing happens, which I think is as coaches, you shouldn't teach real, you should teach feel. You should know real to evaluate, but teach feel. Right? And I think this is, again, I could change again in a couple of years, but I feel like the best way to teach kinematic sequence, and we do a lot of this trying to change this, is to teach what it feels like. And if the red line's not slowing down first, you should fire your trunk. Right? A lot of people think they got to fire your hips. I'm like, no. The torso grabs the lower body, stabilizes the lower body, that's what makes it slow down. If your green line is late, I got to fire my arms to slow down the trunk, right? So I think firing and downswing deceleration, you should probably match those together. I hope that clears up some of the questions that we had over there, and I think you'll see a modification on our online class going in the future on that. But transition sequence, downswing deceleration sequence, transitions, kind of changing direction. I think, one of the best ways to evaluate transition sequence is force and pressure, and really see where you're starting to push, how to change. That's why the body track and some of those things, and then the K-Vest looks at all of our sequences
all the other parts.
So that's why I think those two work really well. Okay. So we've said, you said everything you want to say? I
said everything I want to say, apart from happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody. We will, we'll give you another 10-second count to see if there's any other questions. If not, we will be posting other dates next year for our Q&As for level 1 and for our level 2s. And as always, we appreciate all of you chiming in here. And have a great holidays, everybody. We're good. See you guys.